Thanks for joining us for our eighth Crafty Chat. I'm Lucy, and I'm here with Nancy and Heidi. And then we have a special guest today, Amanda, who also works with us at the library. So Amanda, would you like to say hi and tell us a little bit about what you do at the library?
Okay. Yes, my name is Amanda, and I've worked at the Ann Arbor District Library for a while. Technically, I work in youth services and do a lot of things with kids and families. I do story times, other hands-on programming for kids. I do other things in the community. I work with the schools doing outreach, things like that. But since the library is very open, I also delve into the world of working with teens and adults, whether it's in-person services over the desk, as well as dabbling in hands-on craft programs for all ages, which is great because I can work with kid services, which is what I intended and what I love doing, and I can also bring in my craft knowledge and outside knowledge and do those things for teens and adults, which is some of my favorite stuff to do, is some of the hands-on programs for teens and adults, which is pretty cool.
And we were hoping that you would talk a little bit about how you got into block printing. You do a lot of block printing programs at the library, but even outside of the library, like what it was that, or when you started that, or was there some sort of like genesis of that for you, something that made you gravitate towards it? And
yeah, your crafting journey.
I can tell you started. A friend of mine, her and I were starting a little business. We were going to open an Etsy shop, and she was a much better like illustrator. She could draw better than me. She had more art history background, and so she was doing the designing and the carding, making blocks. And then her and I, we separated our business ways, and she was no longer living in the state. And I wanted to continue making or hand printing my own. I started making cards. I wanted to hand print my own cards. And so then that's how I sort of got started, and I bought my own supplies. And you can buy it, once you buy the supplies, it's not too hard to figure out. Once you find like an ink you like and you get going. So that's how I started it personally. And it's just really fun. I like doing you can carve a block, get your ink, and you put it on note cards. And like I buy so few cards now because now I can make them for all occasions. So you can do like a simple shape, which can be used for many occasions, or you can simplify it or do like lettering. So that's how I started it. And then, so I made cards for years. And then I'm also a sewer. That's one of my main crafts, is sewing. And I wanted to, and I started sewing using a lot of vintage and secondhand linens. In my work, I wanted to use only secondhand and vintage materials in my fabrics. But after sewing for many, many years, I just got a little bored with not hunting for fabric, because I love finding good thrifted fabric, but I just wanted something different because I wanted to change it up. And then I started using more modern, like some quilting fabrics and cottons and that kind of thing in my work. And then I'm like, well, I want to change it again. I should screen print my own fabric. And I just kind of hemmed and hawed. I'm like, screen printing is a lot of stuff. And I live in a small space, so there really isn't a great spot to like set up the whole thing. And I was like hemming and hawing. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can block print. I can print my own fabric. So then I started printing my own fabric, and I love it. I like printing fabric more than the sewing part, I think.
wow.
But that's how I started doing more for myself. So I block print fabric, which is pretty fun. But I'm able to use a lot of the same tools. I had to do more research as far as like what inks I like to work with on different types of fabrics. But I still like printing on paper too. I like doing cards. For me, for printing on fabric, I do small things that I can repeat. I don't do large scale printing or printmaking, and I have not done any. I'm not screen printing my own fabric. I just kind of screen printing over there, and then block printing, which is cool. And as far as the library, many years ago, one of my coworkers, she did her own screen printing, and I did block printing, and her and I decided we wanted to do a printmaking program. And so her and I made this like PowerPoint presentation on history of screen printing and how to screen print, history of block printing, how to block print. And then and we taught them how to do both. And then while people were carving their blocks, it gave time while we had our screen printing station set up. So people, while they were waiting to go, and we had a screen already burned with an image on it. And so while people were waiting for their turn to go and pull their screen, they were sitting at tables carving blocks. So it was just like this, and it was during the summer. It was like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. It was a long time ago. But we were just very ambitious in our are, putting it on for the first time. Then after that, we're like, why did we do that all in one? So then eventually we separated it. No more PowerPoints. No one wants to see that. And then we did screen printing programs separately and then block printing programs separately. And now we have the secret lab in the library. We have a lot of we bring in people to teach screen printing. So the programming has changed like over the past 10 years. We do a lot more programming, a lot more variety, with guest teachers, which is really, really awesome. But that was sort of like the introduction. And so I just do the simple, I do like a block printing for beginners using a soft block. And I've taught it like 2 or 3 times a year for like the past 10 years. I love teaching it. It's one of my favorite programs to host at the library, is just introducing people, because whether you can draw or not, you just put something on the block and you carve it. And the amazing part is when people, they roll the ink on their block and then they put it on the paper, then when they lift it up and then they're so surprised. It's just wonderful watching people, and people just get so creative with it. And there's always a few people who get hooked on it and they're like, okay, where do I buy all of the supplies for this? I need to do it. And there's some people who come repeatedly, like to every program, they come in and they print a bunch of cards. So it's pretty cool. And now we've gone even further, because now that we have the secret lab for messy programs, we also host all the letterpress labs. So all the letterpress equipment is there. And there's a huge crossover with like block printing and letterpress. So that's cool, because now we have other instructors who work there who are hosting the block printing, but they're carving on the linoleum blocks. So it's just like another level, which is pretty cool. So we can do like both kinds of the library. And then you can use the blocks. You can actually use the linoleum blocks you carve in the letterpress equipment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty magical. It's magic. I love it.
That's one of the things I love about library programming in general, is it's a lot of the things that I try to teach are crafting forms that seem really complicated on the surface and simplifying them so that anybody can do it. And that's one of the things that I thought was really cool about block printing, is that it's so simple and it looks so complex, and it looks like you did all this work and it's like, no, this is really simple. But that like aha moment for folks, or that like exclamation of, in their face of like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this.
Yeah.
That's so satisfying. I love that. It's so fun to see people learning and getting excited about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's cool about the library is, yes, we want to make it accessible for patrons of all levels coming in, whether you're a 12-year-old or like a 70-year-old. They're both coming to the same program with different skill levels. And some people are a little nervous about starting a new craft and coming to the library. It's free. If they walk in and start it and they're like, oh, I hate this. This is the worst craft ever. It's too hard. Or what is this? This is too easy. I'm advanced. And they can come and go as they please. It's like low risk, because we provide all the supplies and the instruction, and they can come in and learn something new. That's what's awesome about the library, is it's just entry level. And so we sort of, the way we structure our programming, it's sort of, especially the secret lab programming, it's an introduction to the skill, to the craft, rather than like a make and take where you start to finish. It's more of like, here's the skill, and if they like that craft, independently they can go on and delve more into like learning how to do it more.
Yeah.
Cool. So it's definitely a challenge at the library, but it's also very, like you said, very rewarding.
So do you find yourself gravitating towards a certain theme or motif in a lot of the block printing you do at home?
Yeah, for me, I tend to do more simple shapes, because I'm going to I make small bags a lot with my fabric. So I want something small where you can see the repeated pattern on something small. I usually do like a one-off shape. There are some really beautiful block printing out there that people create these beautiful illustrations, and there's like an animal in the background, and that doesn't translate very well for the blocks I make for my own work printing fabric, because there's a texture in the fabric I use, so I like something more simple. Also, it's accessible for me and my my drawing skills. I like doing animals. I like doing a lot of food. I do a lot of foods, simple shapes. This past winter, I toyed more with geometric shapes and doing a lot of like Aztec motifs, which was really, really fun, something different. So I do new blocks and new fabric every year. There's definitely some favorites though. Like I love printing avocados, because who doesn't want an avocado printed on a piece of fabric?
I've seen a lot of avocados in your work, so that was where I was going with that.
Like one of my favorites, and I made that block a while ago, and you can still use it. I like using the rubber blocks on fabric, because it really presses into it. You can get it into the fabric more.
I keep waiting for you to come up with a kale block.
You know,
It'd be really hard, but
I did. Yeah, and I've drawn some really cool. I like drawing a curly kale. Gives you a lot of like lines and texture and shapes, and I've drawn it. I think I'd be more. I think I would gravitate more towards printing, not card. I don't know. I like making a block I can use on both paper and fabric.
Mhm.
So, kale might happen.
Like one type of block works better on fabric versus paper. So like I would imagine the finer detail stuff comes out more clear on paper than it does on fabric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I like using the soft rubber blocks because they're easy to carve and they actually last. Like I have a nice little organization system for stacking them up so I can keep them without them getting damaged or dented. Or because if you have a block with an image on it and you nick it with something, that nick or that line is there. So if you roll ink on it, that nick is going to be present. The fabric is more forgiving with that because there is sort of like an imperfectness. As with any form of printmaking, there's always that form of like it's one of a kind. Every single print, whether it's a screen print or a block print, it's all every single print is individual and unique in that manner. But with the fabric, I like using I use the Speedball. It's the pink one. I think is it Speedy Carve? It's usually when you go to buy block printing supplies, there's the beige colored blocks, there's pink, there's blue, and then there's like the battleship gray, like linoleum, like that you get mounted on a block. But I like using the pink blocks, the pink Speedball ones. I just find that it carves really well and that it lasts and it gives a good impression on paper and fabric.
Yeah. I've never actually done block printing before, and I was kind of weary going into this of like I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. But then I remembered a couple days ago that I used to carve rubber stamps when I was in like middle school and high school. Just those gigantic rubber stamps that you could get or like the rubber erasers that you could get at the dollar store. Yeah. And I would just go at them with an X-Acto knife, and I was like feathers and bird designs and cats and stuff. And that was really fun. So I was like, oh no, I have done this before.
I feel like a lot of people end up dabbling with it in art class in elementary school, even just carving. Like we used to do the styrofoam meat trays when I was in elementary school in the 80s, and it's the same thing. Whatever you can carve into and create that negative space, you can roll ink on it. That's a print. You made a print. I've taught this to kids where we carved like potatoes and we carved vegetables or like carrots. Carrots and potatoes work really well. And again, it's the same thing. You have a stamp, you put ink on it, and you make it. And same thing with the erasers. It's the same thing. That's what's really cool.
Patterns from like C and D batteries, like the negative side of a battery, where you're just putting ink or paint. And that's just because I was at one point I was kind of intimidated by block printing. Because it was like, oh, I have to have a specific kind of ink. But then I started thinking about it, like you could use acrylic paint, fabric paint, puffy paint. Like it doesn't really matter what you use. If you wanted to stay like strictly block printing, yes, printing ink would be your first choice. But like dabbling, now would be a great time for folks to get into that, because like any styrofoam trays that you're getting from any takeout that you have, cut a piece out of it, use a pencil to press a design into it, roll some paint on it, and slap it on a piece of paper and see what it does.
Yeah, with ink, like you can grab get a Lego, get some acrylic paint, dip it in like you can make like repeating patterns that are really cool. Yeah. But for block printing, like you can, like the actual block printing ink to use with the block, it's a little bit thicker. Like you can't just grab acrylic paint and put it on like a block that you've carved. The block doesn't grab the ink. The block ink is a little bit thicker, which lays on it nice. And even when I've printed on fabric with screen printing ink, and that's a little too thin, and so I have to let it sit out and cure a little bit, and that works well. And now I use oil-based fabric or screen printing ink, or oil-based block printing ink for fabric. So it's been kind of a roller coaster of like finding what pieces work.
A lot of experimentation in it. It sounds.
Yeah.
One of the cool things that I saw a couple years ago online, or actually might have been only like 1 or 2 years ago, was folks doing screen print from home with pantyhose and embroidery hoop and contact paper. And I thought that was so cool. Is they're like, take the pantyhose, stretch it over an embroidery hoop, cut out a design from contact paper, put the contact paper on the pantyhose, and lay the embroidery hoop with the pantyhose a piece of fabric or piece of paper, and then just brush with a paintbrush or a foam brush or a brayer the ink or paint down that you want to use, and when you lift it up, it leaves that outline. So I kind of want to try that.
There's been a lot of like a really cool like lo-fi versions of screen printing. Like people with Cricut machines, they can make stickers and put that on a screen, and you can use that for screen printing. So it's definitely, I think it's accessible for beginning crafters for sure, which is really cool.
Yeah. What we should try to do is do a crossover between the vector labs and the block printing labs, where we have folks like create on the Cricut machine, on the Cameo machines that we have, create your own decals.
Have we done that?
I don't think we've done that. I know that there's a couple staff members that have custom printed motifs on the Cameos and then used it on the stretched silk frames that we already have, like blank ones, that we have in our supply collection, and then use that for special programming for smaller groups that will come in. So not public programming, but smaller stuff for local schools and things like that. I've seen those, and those turn out really cool. And it's just sticky vinyl, like you would use in any Cricut or Cameo machine.
And you can do many pulls on a screen with that sticker on it, like it lasts a while.
So that would be a cool crossover program to do at some point. Don't know when that's going to happen in the future, but it just popped into my head. So.
I'm really curious about this like nylon on an embroidery hoop. I've never seen that, so I'm gonna go do it. I'm just like, I want to go do that right now. That's
good. It seems like a good quarantine craft. You know, like what can I do with the stuff I have at home? It's be a good time to try it.
I don't have any pantyhose though, but
yeah, that's the first thing I don't have.
Well, I also am like, what kind of tights can I cannibalize that I don't wear anymore? Like, do I have anything? I'm sure that I do. I was like, I can probably cut up something I'm not going to wear again and use that. But I'll find a tutorial or a link, because I have a couple pinned on Pinterest on my personal boards. Because it was something at one point of like, oh, this is really cool. I could totally do this with the stuff that I have, and then got buried in the pile of crap that's on my Pinterest, which is, it just happens. So
it does. I know I've been unearthing, some things that like I've pinned or whatever, or found in a folder that I thought, maybe I pinned it for it'd be a good program or something, and it's just ideas that I can play with now. So I know that was something we kind of bandied about discussing, like, I guess we touched on it in a few episodes, but like what's something new, or what's something you finally found you've had time for during this time to play with that you haven't in the past, or that that was just kind of lingering. So anybody or if Amanda, if you have any anything you've been doing recently that's out of your normal box.
I haven't done anything new. I've actually had a bit of like craft paralysis during this quarantine. I know I'm friends with a lot of crafters, and for some of them it's just like a form, and for me usually it's like a form of like therapy, and it's nice to work with your hands and just be creating something. I've just had this bit of like craft paralysis where I'm already anxious about like, getting my work done, and then like getting food. Like the way my brain is processing it, like I haven't come to that moment of like relaxation, I guess. I mean, I've done a few things. Like I love pompoms, like simple crafts. I've done like crafting and making things for work, and work programs for online. And then, but yeah, I haven't, like last night I was wrapping some sticks. I mean, that'll be an upcoming tutorial thing I'm doing for here. I'm making masks as a sewer. I'm making masks. I started that. But I'm not like sitting and crafting. I did just get out I have one thing to show and tell. This is a Bargello kit. And
about that at one point.
What?
We talked about Bargello
at Bargello?
We did, and it's really cool.
It is, and so I made a pair of earrings that look something like this. I have enough. I bought a bunch of extra of the tapestry yarn, and I made a bunch of colorways. Like I wanted to make my own colors. And this was a kit I bought online. And I learned this earlier this year, and I have one earring set. I have one earring done, so I have to make the other one. So I finally got my Bargello packet out, and I put it like on my coffee table. I'm like, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is your next craft, because you have to do something.
Yeah. So, yeah. What other colorways did you come up with? Not as examples, or like just what other colorways did you
Yeah, so the kit that I bought came with, and I'm not a huge fan of like purples, but the kit that I bought came with like these like sage greens and these purples and plums, very fall.
Yeah.
A lot of the kits that she had, and this is a kit I bought from Hello Bargello. She has really, really wonderful instruction and really, really cool kits. You can make like eyeglass cases, the vintage style like Kleenex box covers. And she has some really some larger, more throwback pieces where you can do the actual like designs that look more like the typical Bargello. But my colorways that I thought were more fun were doing some blues. This is like turquoises. I did some like a turquoise and blue with some of these oranges and reds and gold. So I did more of that, and I made a pair of earrings, like a big square earring that I love. And it's also, I like wearing those earrings because then people are like, oh, those are cool, because you don't see them around a lot. And then I can say, oh, I made them. Oh, they're Bargello.
They're like, always good conversation pieces.
Yeah. And I feel like and I was trying to remember the maker of these earrings, but I could not remember the maker. But I like knowing who I'm wearing, because one of my addictions when shopping like online on Etsy and on like other shops or in person at craft fairs is jewelry. Like I have a problem with necklaces and earrings. Like I have a problem. I buy so much. I own so many. And also I'm friends with a lot of makers who make really amazing jewelry. And I'm like, yeah, I need those moon earrings. Yes, I need another pair of enamel earrings, please. So it's fun to be able to, and I like being able to introduce people to Bargello, just talking about the earrings. So,
yeah.
They're warm today.
You also do a lot of like crafting retreats. Amanda, how did you get into those, and how did you find out about them? Because I see a lot of that on your social media that I'm following.
Yeah, so I went to so this shirt is Never Craft Alone. It's from Midwest Craft Con, which is a craft conference. They do it biannually now, and I went one year, and it's really cool for makers or people who are trying to like enhance their business and work on different aspects of like opening up, like how do you do wholesale and doing better social media, that kind of thing. And those pieces didn't specifically apply to me, but it was really fun to go and hang out with other makers. There's also, like I'm friends with a bunch of crafters, and a couple of them did this thing called Craftaway Camp. And then, so it was actually a camp where people could sign up to and go to. That's not happening anymore. But then just meeting other people who were like-minded and liked crafting and liked outdoors. And then we would just get together and hang out and craft. Like even like during quarantine, like we'll have like crafty Zooms where there's like 10 or 15 people, and people are just working on stuff. And it's like, what are you working on? What are you working on? So it's kind of fun just to be around that many people who are making. And so it's mostly just like, it's just casual things that I do now. Like we do a lot of like crafty get-togethers where we hang out, you know, have some snacks, wear comfy clothing, and sit and talk about crafts. Sometimes people will bring in like vintage craft kits they've gotten, or sometimes it'll end up being where there's little tutorials where somebody's like, hey, I got this really cool book and I'm going to try this. Then other people are learning, or they can offer pointers on how to do different things. So it's another way to learn things.
Yeah, I've looked for a long time at different like knitting and sewing retreats as something fun to do, just something different, to go and have a space that's not my own home to make in, because there's something about that kind of jumpstarts my creative process of being around other people and getting ideas from them and talking about crafting, that I find really inspiring. We've talked about this several times with like doing these videos is kind of doing that for a lot of us that have been talking about, you know, crafting and having these conversations. So it's something that I've kind of always looked into of like, do I want to do this? I was going to go to Stitches Midwest, and I actually found out between the last time I talked about this and this time, they're running it in September, and it's in Schaumburg, Illinois, which is just outside of Chicago. And Stitches Midwest is like a yarn and knitting and crochet conference that runs every year. So it's like stuff like that, and then I'm finding other smaller stuff that, like there's a quilting and sewing retreat that's like 1 5-bedroom house just outside of Mackinac, and it's adorable. It's so cute. I was like, I really want to do that. It's very pricey. So I'm gonna have to save a little bit of money for that, but because I think that was like $600 for a weekend.
Yeah.
But it looked so cool.
I highly recommend like some sort of a retreat like that. And even if it's too pricey, you can make your own. You can like, you know, get a cabin, get an Airbnb, and you can start with people you know. And like, and sometimes you can keep it more loose where like just bring your own crafts, you can like free crafting. And other times you can say, hey, everybody bring, you know, X, X, and X. We can do a little tutorial if people want to learn about this. It's really therapeutic to be able to hang out. Like for me, it's just like a form of therapy just to hang out with like-minded people who are just crafting and making and being in the space together. It's so wonderful. It's so good.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend. I know there's more of these types of things that have been popping up. A friend of mine was going to go to one this summer in Colorado, and it was I don't know if it was knitting or crocheting, but there was a pattern designer who had designed these sweaters, and it was like this and it was a little bit fancier, but it was in Colorado. Like it's a hiking and I think it's hiking and crocheting, and you do both, and you're there with the pattern designer, and it just sounded like really like cool because I also like combining crafts with the great outdoors.
Yeah.
Last night I was sitting in my yard like wrapping sticks with yarn just outside because it's nice. Hear the birds.
I spent an hour earlier this week just sitting on a blanket in the courtyard of my apartment building in the sunshine because it was so cold, just sitting and knitting because it was great. But the only time that I've ever thought about going on a cruise was when I found a quilting cruise that was in like, gosh, I can't remember if it was just the Bahamas and Puerto Rico, if it went to like further south towards South America. But I was like, now that cruises have never appealed to me. That might appeal to me. Like, give me an excuse.
I think what's good about that, because then you have that time it's set aside. Like even if you have that intention being at home, like I'm going to work on this project for, you know, this afternoon, something will always inevitably distract. You know? So.
But I mean, if you're already like going on a quote unquote like a trip or going to a destination, you're already going to feel sort of relaxed knowing you're out of your space. Yeah. But then adding the element of creativity and crafting too, it's like just next level.
Yeah.
Next level. So recommend get some friends, get some tents set up, and have like tables in the middle as you're like community crafting, community snacks, tents all around, and then if you're not.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah. It's fun. What has everybody else been working on? Anything interesting?
I started making, I actually have been talking about them, but I started them button bands for masks.
Okay.
So it's a crocheted band.
You're crocheting and putting buttons?
Yeah. So it's a crocheted band, and then you put buttons on either end, and you use the buttons to loop the elastic of a mask with the ear elastics around instead of your ears, so that it doesn't folks that are wearing them all the time, especially like the only elastic that I can find is 1/8 inch beading elastic, and it's very uncomfortable behind your ears. It hurts a lot. So I was trying to make these as an option, and I've been making them for coworkers for when the library reopens, because we will be wearing personal protection equipment as an option of like, you know, here's a ton of these. I have all this time. You know, this is yours. I already gave away a couple to my dad and my brother and my mom. So it's already kind of moving forward.
What's cool about the crochet, because I've seen people make them like 3D printing bands with different notches, or like using a headband, or using more like, I guess that would be stretchy too, but with the fabric, the knit, you could totally just, it stretches more than like, because at first I was like, why doesn't she just put 2 buttons on a piece of fabric, but that fabric doesn't stretch.
It doesn't, no.
You want to have that give, so it's not like, you know, suffocating you.
Yeah, I put 4 buttons on the ones. The other ones that I was working on, they're all the way over there. I can't reach them. The other ones I was working on, I put 4 buttons on, so they were adjustable. So you could like pick which buttons you wanted to put the ear loops on, so that it would fit a larger variety of sizes of heads. So you wouldn't have to worry about it being too loose or too tight. That I've been working on, and then just more of the same knitting projects. I haven't finished anything this week. I started a couple things, but haven't finished anything.
I came close to finishing a pair of leg warmers. I got one. So.
Are they stripy leg warmers? I have to know.
Yeah, I should have probably, it's back in the other room, so again, wasn't prepared, but I'll show them off next time when they're done. But yeah, it's like this weird, I had 2 skeins of this yarn that I don't remember why I bought it. It's some acrylic Deborah Norville yarn that I bought years ago. Carnival is the colorway. So it's got a lot of different like purples and reds and oranges in it. It's kind of, a chaotic yarn in a lot of ways. But yeah, it just seemed like reading how much was on there, I was like, yeah, there's probably enough for one leg warmer. And then I had the panic when I was finishing it, like, oh, maybe I actually need to have 3 skeins. So I was like scanning the internet for, can I find this yarn? I don't use it anymore. And I did find it, and I was about to buy it, and I was like, no, just finish the one leg warmer. You probably have enough, just like, because you know how you just never know. It's like, it looks like there's not that much, but then it's like that ball just kind of keeps going. So fortunately, because I wasn't, you know, really working with a pattern as I normally do, just winging it, and it worked out. So I just gotta make the other one.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting.
How
I
about
started a new shawl. I put my knitting sweater aside, and I think it's one you've done. I think you told me about it, Nancy. The Oli
Oli.
OLI. Yeah.
I was just saying Olia, but I think it's Olilia. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
Olilia. I was like looking at it. I'm like, how do I say this? But I wanted to find something that I could do with yarn I had, and I had the needle, and like, because it just has 2 different colors in it, you know. So it's fun too, because it's not hard, but you feel like you're doing something a little different because you're wrapping and turning it. And so I mean, I just like did the first section, that's it.
Yeah.
But
that
so
shawl was really fun. It's the first time that I'd done short rows in knitting, and short rows are one of those crazy scary.
I love short rows. Yeah.
Everybody talks about short rows of like, oh my god, this is a nightmare. It was very, very well explained. Stephen West is another pattern designer that does short rows very straightforwardly in knitting. It doesn't even really call them short rows, but it's a great way to blend 2 colors of yarn, so it goes back and forth between 2 different colors of yarn. It's very pretty.
Yeah, I love the way she has, like, right at the top of the pattern. I mean, she's got the instructions for wrap and turn. Like, there's not a lot of times where you have a knitting pattern where the pattern's written out and then the instruction of each thing is right there at the top. So it's like you can't ever forget what you're doing. It's nice.
Yeah, it is.
Good pattern.
How about you, Amanda? Are you working on anything right now? I know you said that you were struggling with with time.
I've been doing a lot of yarn stuff. Fun fact, I don't knit or crochet. People always are kind of surprised by that. They're like, oh, you're a crafter, and they just assume I knit or crochet. I'm like, nope. But I was just talking to some crafter friends, and one of them, she was yarn bombing a treehouse, and she was, whenever I do a Zoom or meeting with her, she's always like crocheting. And I have another friend who's always crocheting and making this blanket. And I know people who've learned crochet from friends during this, and I was like, I'm gonna try that. So, but I'm also a terrible student. I'm a much better instructor than a student. I'm very needy. As a student, I need a lot of attention in one-on-one, and I ask a billion questions. So I may go the crochet route at some point. But I do, just from like, so since I'm not a knitter or a crocheter, I've never really had piles of like those supplies or like yarn. But after doing so many like crafty retreats, and now I have like a plethora of yarn because of making pom-poms. I make a ton of pom-poms and like wrap sticks with yarn for decoration. Like, so now I have a whole thing of yarn. I'm like, great, where do I store all this yarn now?
The eternal struggle.
Yeah, well, and like the Bargello yarn that I order, it's more like an embroidery skein. It's like tiny, which is nice because you can put it in one container. But it's just another supply. I mean, you guys know the craft supply. You need a lot of space for all your gear, all your stuff. But I would like to have more of a craft like crochet where I could take it with me. It's on the go, easy, you know, instead of needing special things. So.
Yeah, it is. I think maybe one of the reasons why folks ask you, like, do you knit or crochet, and they assume that you do, is all the pom-poms. Because I've had folks say that of like, oh my god, you make a lot of pom-poms. Do you do a lot of stuff with yarn? Do you knit or crochet? And I'm like, well, yes, I happen to, but I can see that path of like, no, I just really like pom-poms, because a lot of us that I know, Heidi, Lucy, and I, and now you, obsessed with pom-poms. They're adorable, and I love them. And we have several other staff members at the library that pom-poms will come up, and they'll get really excited because they're adorable and very fun.
Yeah, you guys have done some really fun programs of pom-poms. Oh, they're doing a pom-pom program. That's awesome.
That's why we did Pom-Pom-Palooza. Like, that was
Yeah, one of the best days at work was like Lucy's mailbox is near mine, and I walked by the mailboxes, and somebody had put like little pom-pom animals in her mailbox for her, and I was just like, they were so cute, and I was just like, oh, she's so lucky. Look at those poms.
I know, they are so cute.
So I want to show you this book, actually. This is a book called The Loome Party.
I love that book. I have one of those little looms.
And so that's how
Yeah.
I make I know people use the donut rings, and I kind of want to get some donuts to make poms, but I use is there a picture of the tool in here? But I love using the Loome tool. I have a couple different ones, but I like it because you can make a couple different sizes. I feel like you do a lot of trimming with these poms, though. Here's one of the Loome tools. So here's one of the Loome tools.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this book. There's some really cool stuff in here, some really cool patterns. But I like making poms and like stringing them into garland. I put them in like a little bowl for decoration. I don't do a ton of like making animals or creatures or things out of them. But pom-pom earrings, of course, got those. But I like making like wall hangings where you get like a stick or a dowel and you can dangle. Like, I have a really, really pretty one on the back of my front door. It's all like celestial colors, so it's like blues and grays, and it's really fun. And there was some sort of a pattern online I saw that had those colors going, and I was like, yep, that's what I want. And so it's like a wall hanging that has like 16 of them like dangling, and it looks really cool.
That's really cool.
But
I had started a pom-pom headband at the last pom-pom program that we had done, and I buried it in a bag, forgot about it, and then when my cat moved in, I found the project because she dug through one of my bags and pulled the pom-poms out and just tore them through the whole living room. We're everywhere. It's just like, okay, well, those are cat toys now. So there goes my headband, but it was very fun to watch her bat those around. So it made me happy. But yeah, I want to have a pom-pom eventually. We talked about doing a whole jacket of pom-poms.
I want to make a pom jacket for sure. I love costuming and costumes, and I would love to have a jacket full of poms.
That would be your staple for festivals every year, I think.
Yeah. It's hard to narrow down like ideas for festivals. Sometimes we stick with a theme, and I'm like, well, what does a pom-pom jacket have to do with Earth Day? I don't know.
It's pretty. That's all you need.
Oh yes, we should all make pom-pom jackets and like show up to work in them.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm down.
Yes.
I'm watching a Netflix show with my partner, and one of the kids set in a high school, and one of the teachers had a sweater that was just rows of little itty bitty tiny pom-poms, almost like baubles, and knitting or crochet, and I was just like, I need that in my life.
That's cool.
That is my wardrobe goal, and they were like all really bright colors. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, one thing too, like I tend to stick with my same sort of colors I like reds and blues and greens and turquoises, aquas, that kind of thing. Mustards. I have a ton of green yarn. I have so many, like you talk about kale colored yarn, I have so many kale. I actually made a pom-pom banner that was all kale green colors. It's my kale banner. But what's neat about making poms is they're small, and I can break out and do colors I'm not normally like a fluorescent pink. Like I'm not into that, but if I'm at a crafting event and somebody has a bunch of pink yarn, I'm like, sure, I'll make a pink pom because the equipment is it's low and the item is so small. Then if I make like a banner, like I have one hanging in my office at work, and it's colors I wouldn't hang up a pink and orange banner like on my wall here because it doesn't quite fit. But in my office, it's just like fun and it's different. It's a pop color that I wouldn't normally use, so it's fun to. Because they're so small, you can do that. Yeah. This is a lot about poms, not block printing. I love it.
The rabbit holes we go down.
So one thing, I'll bring it back around because one thing that the library does for programming is we've hosted 2 Wayzgoose printing festivals, which have been really cool, which focus on printmaking of all sorts, whether it's screen printing, intaglio, block printing, and letterpress. So we've had vendors come into the library and sell their work, as well as presenters talking about their processes. We've done 2 of them. Sadly, this year we can't host the one we planned for June, but it'll be back. We are still planning the next one. So, but if you're interested in printmaking, it's the Ann Arbor Wayzgoose and Printing Festival. We'll be back, and it's a cool place where we do a lot of hands-on things where people can. They can do their own screen printing and letterpress and block printing and kind of get their hands, they can dabble in those different arts while also mingling with other artists whose main passion and craft is that form of art, which is neat.
And I know that we've had a table at the past Carytown book fairs for letterpress, where we've had somebody come in with a small like tabletop letterpress, and they'll the primary staff will be there to run off a couple prints for folks to take home with them. And then we were running in the past letterpress labs every Wednesday. So those at some point will those will resume at some point in the future. But that was, we have an extensive amount of equipment at the library related to letterpress and block printing and screen printing. So it's something that our programming is pretty heavy in. And we are one of the only places in Ann Arbor that you can do that. So I think the next nearest big places are in Detroit, as far as I'm aware.
It is really cool. So if you're interested in doing letterpress and would like to take a free class and dabble in it, down the road, we'll be back in action.
We will be.
Yeah, so I host one of the sewing labs every month. I like hosting one of the letterpress labs every month. I like being in that world and watching other people create, because some people do some amazing things. But block printing, for one of my library tasks several years ago was to do like a mini safely planned block printing program at the juvenile detention center. I've taught block printing at Top of the Park for a while. We taught it for a very small group of like 20 people. And then we did it, was it last year, where there was like 130 people, and it was just like madness, and it was super hot. But it was a challenge to teach it to that many and to teach it outside. I've taught it to kids outside, so it's fun to have taught it like in so many capacities. So
cool.
It's definitely one of those things that's fun to teach and do it yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda, for joining us for this conversation, and thank you guys, our viewers, for watching with us. Please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more crafty chats, or drop us a comment in the comments down below. If there's anything you want us to talk about, anything you want to ask questions at all, shoot us a comment and we will get to it as soon as we can. Again, thank you for joining us. Have a great day, and don't forget to love each other. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.